Unfortunately, what you're about to hear is real. The members of this radio program are simply not that bright, or what some people would call educated. They are merely stupid. They're not trying to offend anyone on purpose. And all have played doctors on TV. You have been warned and are cordially invited to join the party. This is the men's room.
Forget it, man, and get with the countdown. Get with the countdown. Shake this square world and blast off for Kicksville. The trippers, the grasshoppers, the hip ones, all gathered in secrecy and flying high as a kite.
This is the men's room with Miles and Thrill. You know what they say, shake your radio more than 3 times, and you're playing with it. You're listening to the men's room.
And away we go. Welcome to show number 2,854. Along with Steve the Throw Hill, the Ted Smith, Robin Fox, and Mike Hawk. Thank you. All right, the men's room. On tap today, who sucks less? The word goes to state slang. Get ready to play Profile This. Plus headlines, a men's room shot of the day, fun with listener emails, and everyone's favorite TV time with Ted. Click, clack. Drinking the draw. All right, here we go. We head to Florida, where a Florida man gets into a fist fight with another man's car. Meanwhile, when the pilot accidentally triggers the hijack alarm, the plane will not go far for hours on end. Speaking of flights, one flight freaks out, so plane has to land. An Alaska squirrel steals a donut right out of a police officer's hand, and a police dog named Nacho sniffs out $1 million in meth, then gets detained for being named Nacho. That is all coming on today's very special episode of The Men's Room.
And now, here's the question.
Hola, bitches. Good day to you and yours. All right, the so-called iron-fisted patriarch of the Jackson family, one Joe Jackson, has died at the age of 89 years old. Now, he's the guy behind the Jackson 5, Michael Jackson, Janet, LaToya, etc., as well as countless Motown acts and all kinds of hits you're familiar with, but he's also... well, he was also a raging a-hole. He was well known for being an abusive and hostile dude, and chances are that's how he'll be remembered. Time will tell, but family's family. In Kentucky, there's 2 brothers, and it's hard to know which one will be remembered more. The one who was shot twice in 1 year, or the one who shot his brother twice in 1 year. Then you have family situations like Tommy Lee and his son. Not exactly sure what their whole beef is, but... maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. About a year ago, his son knocked him out cold, put the picture on Twitter. They've been going back and forth recently. There's a story about a naked hermit. Just follow us on this. A naked hermit, Japanese guy. He decided to live by himself on a teeny tiny island off the coast of Japan. He's been there for 30 years. He wanted to be naked. He wanted to be left alone. He's been there for 30 years. Well, now they're forcing him off the island, bringing him back to the mainland. They're saying because he looks like he's in ill health. He's 82 years old, living naked on an island. He always looks like he's in ill health. Believe it or not, he has a wife and kid that he left on the mainland, but I get the feeling whatever they do, you're probably going to remember Dad most because he's the naked hermit that lived by himself on an island. But that's the thing about family, man. Good or bad, some people are just more memorable, and occasionally it's because they did something very successful. Sometimes they're only well known to you and your family because they're just the worst of the worst, and you know it. So today, this is what we want to know, and think long and hard about this. Who is the person from your family that everyone will remember? And good or bad, what will they be remembered for?
Be part of the big show. Call 844-999-OLA. Like the Men's Room on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Men's Room Live. And send those emails to the Men's Room at mensroomlive.com. You are listening to the Men's Room Radio Network.
We return to the men's room with Miles and Thrill.
Hold the jaws and away we go. Welcome to show number 2,854 with a larger than charge program we have for you today. The exciting return of Who Sucks Less. I heard little moans and groans going on today, so I'm going to assume that it wasn't as bad as it is most weeks.
You know, look, man, every week it's bad because inevitably you're talking about people that just piss you off. Mm-hmm. But that said, no, maybe they're not as bad as some people have been in the past.
All right. Who Sucks Less is once again coming up. The word goes to state slang. Believe it or not, there is a lot of slang that is unique to each and every state that is out there. But some states use terms more so than others, and exclusively in some cases, depending on the state. So we have some individual state slang coming up with a return of the word. I will give you I'll give you an example here of state slang. Okay, let's just say that I call you a chichaco, Chichaco. Where are you from?
I would say California.
I'd say Texas.
We're in Alaska. Chichaco is a newcomer to Alaska who knows very little about living there.
Okay, yeah, I was a Chichaco.
Yeah, you're a Chichaco. Anytime you're a visitor, or you moved there or whatever. So that's the kind of the tip we got coming up with the word as the word goes to state slang. We got an interesting email from a listener who had a dream about the members of the show, and we thought, what better way to try to capture this than to write it out? It's kind of like theater, like a play.
Yeah, it's a very descriptive email.
And since the parts themselves are of us as the characters, we're just going to go in character and read this email and play the parts as they are written. So we're gonna give that a shot. No promises that will turn out entertaining. We don't do a lot of theater in here, not live theater. But,
there's a reason for that.
But we're going to give it a shot. And today we talk about who is the person from your family that everyone will remember, and good or bad, what will they be remembered for? And we start with the death of Joe Jackson. He died at 89 years old. He launched the Jackson 5 to stardom, as they say, but not without controversy. The iron-fisted Jackson family patriarch and manager died at the age of 89 from cancer, according to TMZ. The father of Michael Jackson, Joe Jackson, launched the Jackson 5. That included Michael and brothers Jackie, Marlon, Jermaine, and Tito in Gary, Indiana.
Marlon. I never remember Marlon.
Yeah. In the 60s.
I think Wayne's.
Yeah, I remember Marlon Wayne, but with the Jackson, right? You say the Jackson 5. Marlon's the one guy I never think of.
Yeah.
You think of Jackie?
I don't think of Jackie, but I want to say he was kind of the main player in the band at the time.
Jermaine, here's how I remember growing up. Jermaine looked like the older, good-looking one.
Right.
Michael was, of course, the lead singer. Tito was the guy that everyone made fun of. And I'm not really sure.
And to this day, that continues.
And I'm not really sure that I could fill in the gaps on the others as far as who they were,
Randy?
identifying them by looking at them.
Oh, by looks, no.
You know, I just knew that.
Was it Marlon, the other little one?
See, that's it. We don't know, man. I mean, it was the Jackson 5. But really, it was like the Jackson 4 plus Marlon.
Our listeners in the listening on the Ford are shaking their head. 4 number one singles. I Want You Back, ABC, I'll Be There for the Jackson 5. Jackson 5 sold millions of records. They had their own variety show, cartoons.
I remember the cartoons.
Serial. I mean, they are the most successful R&B groups of all time, if not the most successful R&B group of all time.
Is getting a cereal. Is that kind of like the mountaintop of the pop culture world, right? Like
I think
Mr. T had a cereal, right?
And I'll tell you why.
Jackson, G.I. Joe had a cereal. I feel like if in pop culture you have made that big of an impact, like you get a cereal, and the cereal is never healthy.
But it also tells me that your time is only here for a short period of time. Because you're striking when the iron is hot. No, you know, Tony the Tiger, there wasn't a Frosted Flakes thing. He's always going to be there. Captain Crunch is always going to be there. Mr. T had a cereal when he was really popular.
Sure.
Hulk Hogan had a cereal when he was really popular.
What was it called?
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had a cereal when they were on top of the world. Like, so when you're on top of the world, G.I. Joe, whatever at that time, Pokemon or Pac-Man. Pac-Man had a cereal.
But I mean, Hogan, it's not like Hulk Hogan has ever really gone away.
He hasn't.
He hasn't gone away, but I feel like you're better off if you're G.I. Joe or one of those.
Have a 9-inch penis.
Because
Hulk Hogan does.
If you're like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you can come back, right? Like my kids, again, we brought up Double Dare yesterday. They watched Double Dare last night, and to us, it's this old show from back in the day. It's the same show now. My kids weren't familiar, but it has the same impact. I mean, this is the greatest show they've ever seen. So, like, that could come back. Hulk Hogan, he's never gone away, but like, he's not getting a cereal again. Mr. T's not, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, look, they'll be rebooted again, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, same
and if
with
it's
G.I.
massive,
Joe.
right, G.I. Joe, he'll never go away. But if they hit that they can come back. Mr. T, it's one and done, man.
Joe Jackson also guided the careers of Michael's solo career and sister Janet Jackson when they embarked. Over the years, Jackson had a rocky relationship with his wife, Catherine, with whom he had 10 children. God damn. They separated several times, never actually divorced. Catherine described his alleged extramarital affairs in the book My Family, The Jacksons. Jackson was also criticized by his children and others for allegedly being an abusive parent, which included physical punishment. He acknowledged that he was a strict disciplinarian, but was unapologetic about his behavior. I'm glad I was tough because look what I came out with. I came out with some kids that everyone loved all over the world, and they treated everybody right. So Joe Jackson is dead at the age of 89.
So don't worry about me abusing them. They good kids that way. You beat them to the point they were terrified. They said even during the Jackson 5 days, they would do performances all the time on TV, right? And if Joe felt that maybe they were a little flat or they didn't swing the bass enough the way he'd asked them to before the performance, there was a price to pay.
And Michael Jackson did not turn out fine.
Yeah, man. Michael Jackson was exceptionally popular. He was exceptionally successful, but I don't think anyone would argue that Michael Jackson was fine.
Joe Jackson
that he was a well-adjusted
Joe Jackson
individual.
goes down as the bad guy of the family, correct?
Without question.
This is bad. This is not
that's
good.
what you think of. Granted, he was their father. He did get him in the band. But as soon as I saw that, all you think is the abusive father died.
He got them in the band because he threatened them to be in the band. Right. It's one thing if you say, well, I grew up and my parents were musicians and it inspired me. You go, okay, that's cool. But, if my parents beat me to do some, chances are I would be good at that.
Right. Okay.
I mean,
all my kids turned out fine.
I think all of them are a little crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Janet seems like the most normal one, and then when you hear her speak, I'm like, she's a little loony, too.
Yeah, Janet, to me, just does the best of not speaking in public a ton outside of her concerts.
And then when she does, you're like, yes, keep not speaking. Not that she says anything bad, she just kind of
Last time she
crazy.
she talked about depression.
Yeah.
So that was the latest time we've heard from her. All right, now let's go to Kentucky. And I'm sure our listeners at Z-Rock 103 maybe have heard the story. I don't know how close this is to Lexington, but there's a 43-year-old guy in Phelps, Kentucky, and his name is David Atkins.
What's up, Dave?
And last June, he was arrested for shooting his brother. He was initially charged with attempted murder, but he wound up pleading guilty to fourth-degree assault, and he got out of jail 3 months ago. Earlier this month, though, David shot his brother again. Not sure why, but clearly these two do not get along. Anyway, his brother survived again, and David was released again. Now he's in jail again, facing first-degree assault charges, so he was let out and then put back in. So our question today, who is the person from your family that everyone will remember, and good or bad, what will they be remembered for? 844-999-OLA.
A couple of comments come in, and I like this one. It says, my aunt and uncle will always be known as the coke heads and or coke dealers of the family. Nothing was ever said, but you just knew it. You can tell the type a mile away. Someone...
you can tell the type.
Do? So it never confirmed that they did it either way.
What is the type?
Maybe they never ate at the family gatherings.
That's what I mean. How do you know? How do you individually?
But see, there's two different types I would think of. You have the ones that maybe seem disheveled, but then on the other hand, you have the guys that do coke that they got the jet skis and they're living the good life.
Right. It takes a lot of money to have that kind of a habit.
Right. If it's a habit,
so it's not hard to tell.
Yeah, but I'm from an outside looking in, as far as the physical aspects of maybe sweating or being skinny or, like you say, not eating or whatever.
Or just going a million miles an hour at Christmas.
Right.
Right. These is family. They're holidays. Sorry. If you're on you could show up to a family thing a little buzzed or a little stoned.
Yeah,
you show up on coke or
I feel
a mushroom. I think we could tell something's wrong with it.
I remember there was one Christmas a couple of years ago, probably about 20 years ago now, and going to my parents' house for Christmas. I'm going to go there a little later because I had to work and all this stuff. And I just say, you know what, man? And I know a ton of the family's going to be there. And my mother throws massive gatherings. So it's the family, all of her friends. We're talking 40 people deep. And I made the mistake of getting really, really, really stoned before I went. I thought it would just calm my nerves a little bit, which it did. But I'm peaking when I get there, man. And it sucked because I walk in, there's all these people, and they all want to greet you, and there's all this stuff. And I'm trying to be as normal as I can. And then I made one comment. My mother, the way she set up a certain Christmas wreath, there were the the branches of the pine tree kind of thing. Look, in my stoned mind, it looked like, from my perspective, that Santa Claus had crashed through the window. And to me, this was such an obvious comment to make. So I made this comment. Everyone looked at what I was pointing at. Clearly, no one saw what I was saying. And I said this with a big grin, thinking, I'm going to say something funny. And it's just the most awkward silence in the world, right? And everyone slowly goes back to what they're doing. About 10 minutes later, my mother pulls me aside. She's like, are you okay? I'm like, oh, yeah. I don't know if she knew I was high, if she thought I was drunk, but all I wanted was for that Christmas day.
Yeah.
I could not stop. And I haven't done it again. I'm like, it's just too much. But I feel like if you were going to be coked up, wouldn't you save it for a summer holiday? Like, if you show up on July 4th and you're hyper, it's okay. The kids are hyper. Everyone's outside. You can light fireworks, maybe. Right?
Spot them a mile away.
Christmas, if you're indoors and people are sitting on sofas talking,
I don't think
that's the best time.
I might have. I don't think I have a coked up relative. I definitely have relatives that are that smoke weed. Sure. I know that for a fact. But I think there's one, as far as the bad side of the family goes, I do know one guy in particular, and he's not necessarily. I think the most memorable thing about him is that he's such an ass, and he's also a snake oil salesman at the same time.
Oh boy!
So his angle is always like he would. It's a lot like Cousin Eddie. The whole point of having a conversation with him, or him having a conversation with you,
is finance for a future project.
At the end, he's going to ask you for money.
Right?
He's something. There's never going to be a time where the end goal of his conversation is not going to be something. Mm-hmm. Okay, so. I can't remember where we had met up. He is the guy that you go to the bar and you have 5 rounds and there are 3 people there, right. And he still has avoided paying for a round. You're like, this is mathematically right. Impossible. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe you had 6 rounds. It should have been twice, but some reason he's not paying. You know what I mean? And he never has. All right. So then I know okay. And not only that, but you go to his house, and these are a few years back, but. You went to his house, and he had a television that was as big as the wall.
Right.
I mean, it was it looked like a movie theater. And behind you, you had like this wall of audio visual stuff. You know what I mean? Like whatever was new at the time.
Sure, he's that guy.
He owned it. Like he has all this crap, but he does not have a dime ever to spend, and maybe some of it's hot. He could have bartered it.
What do you, knowing what you know of him?
Well,
because it's different when it's a family member.
I know what I know about him.
You know stuff about them, so you see certain things.
So this is his opportunity. So his father passes on. Okay, now keep in mind he lives in Boston. Okay, right? Which and he worked for a major company in Boston. His father passes away and leaves him a house in West Virginia. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to go take care of this house. So he ends up going and moves and quits his job.
And moves into the house.
And moves into the free house because guess what? He's the only kid. He's the only surviving family member. He gets this house.
You had to know that was going to happen. Right?
He moves into this house and just goes nuts on drugs. Just has a great time. You know what I mean? Just basically
That's what you do.
Doing what you do in West Virginia, which is just getting as much synthetic heroin as possible, doing it, selling it. I mean, That's what you do if you live in West Virginia. And you clean the beautiful coal when you're not doing that, when you're not waved. But anyway, so he comes up with this. Okay, so apparently he comes up with a scheme where he moves all of this stuff in.
Okay.
All right, so when he moves, his giant TVs, all of his stuff, all of his electronics, brand new furniture, all this stuff, right? Because he got a little bit of money too. And his plan is this. I'm going to get that house. I'm going to get insurance on that house. I'm going to get insurance on all the property on that house.
No.
And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that house on fire. Torch it. And I'm going to burn that house down with all that crap in it. And guess what? Everything I'm going to get is good. You know why? The primary reason was because he wanted a new television. He wanted new things, all right? But he didn't have you can't just go trade in a stereo for the new version of it.
So the idea is to get a new TV.
The entire house to the ground, collect the insurance money, and then go buy new stuff.
But if you know this, then I'm guessing the authorities pieced this together.
No, they did not.
No.
So he
say, how dope was that new TV?
Well, you know what? He's living in Florida now. So the idea was to burn that damn thing to the ground and then move to Florida where, to be quite honest with you, the cost of living is not much different than it is in West Virginia.
So did everyone in the family piece together what your Uncle Eddie had done, Cousin Eddie there?
Well,
did everyone recognize,
a couple of people knew exactly what he had done, and those were the people who had lent $1,000 here or bailed him out of jail or done all of these things. But I mean, like, as soon as we found out, and you got to keep in mind, this is a family member's home. This is a home that's
it was his father's home.
You know, many people spent many time there. You know other people in the family who've lived there and passed on or whatever. Like this was that home. Burned it to the ground. He was conveniently out of town at the time when the house burned down.
Of course.
So he paid somebody to burn his frickin' house down.
Does everyone in your family pay people to do bad stuff?
No.
I mean, I know
that's what I mean. No, that's not normal. Like, that is not normal. But that is horrible. But at the same point in time, like, it's like, that's just who he is. He is a complete scammer. Like everything.
How old is
about
this guy
him,
now?
Oh God, he's in his 60s. But everything about him is a complete scam. His whole life has been a scam. Which is, to me, it's kind of like he's kind of like a grifter.
Yeah, that's precisely what you are. At that point.
He's been in jail a couple times, but they've always been for dumb things. You know what I mean? It's like a DUI or whatever. He's never been busted for anything.
None of his actual crime fraud.
A bad night of making a dumb decision, not insurance fraud or ripping people off at a business or selling hot goods or you know what I mean?
Like, he seemed to keep the hot goods.
Yeah, exactly. Who is a person from your family that everyone will remember? And good or bad, what will they be remembered for? 844-999-OLA. Hold the line. More of your calls coming up. You are listening to the Men's Room Radio Network.
Hola, bitches. You're listening to the Men's Room.
Word goes to state slang. We'll return the word right before we drink a toast with the shot of the day. Our question, who would you say is a person from your family that everyone will remember? And good or bad, what will they be remembered for? 844-999-OLA.
Well, I'm going to share a comment with you that just came in. This is a little disturbing. My cousin was nursed until she was 7 years old. So she's known for that and the fact that at 35, still lives with her mom.
Okay.
Nursing until you're 7.
It's just until you see the picture. I have seen a picture, and I think the child was 5, of someone who was still breastfeeding up until that age. And it's, you know what? It's just not something that I've seen. So it was a little bit, it took me back a little bit.
I mean, look, and people made their arguments for it and all that. I hear you. Still, no. Hello, John. Welcome to the Men's Room.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hola.
So I think my dad will probably be remembered the most because he's done a lot of crazy stuff. But the one I think is most memorable is when he was younger, he was having a party at his house, and he said that he would accept any dare. So somebody dared him to stab himself, and he picked up a steak knife and stabbed himself in the chest.
He stabbed himself in the chest. Was there some monetary reward or just because someone dared him?
No, just because he was drunk and, reckless.
What is it like growing up with that kind of guy? I mean, was he still generally the same person as your father as you're growing up?
He was a very interesting man. He was a big alcoholic, but the good news is he's moved to crack now. So
that's that. Oh, thank God! You know what? Most people agree with that. Like, golly, I'm so glad he doesn't drink, but just is hitting the pipe.
Well, if nothing else, the same money.
Who smokes crack and doesn't still drink?
He's an interesting guy.
He did, but he did quit drinking.
Yes.
So he quit drinking, which is commendable.
It is. Alcohol is a very addictive drug.
How long ago did he make the switch from booze to crack?
Probably a couple of years ago. I don't talk to him much. He lives across the country.
Okay. I was going to say, he doesn't live here because when we lived on the East Coast, you'd be exposed to a lot more crack cocaine than you are on the West Coast. Meth would be more West Coast. Meth is everywhere. Don't get me wrong.
No, meth is everywhere. As far as what people advertise, crack was the thing.
I knew plenty of neighbors. I knew plenty of people who smoked crack on a regular basis. I knew plenty of people who would ask you when you would buy weed if you needed any crack.
It's such a weird thing.
It really is a different dynamic on it. But and crack, obviously, very addictive.
Do you think he does better on the alcohol or the crack? As far as what you know, what's going on in his life, his decision making and all that.
Man.
What about this guy? I'm saying
the people that I know, they could do both, I think, functionally.
He was kind of a jerk when he was an alcoholic, but he's a much nicer man smoking crack. He just is forgetful.
That's the weird thing about, and I would say this, and under no circumstances am I recommending crack, but on the East Coast, where it's just more prevalent for whatever reason, but you ran into a lot of crackheads, and unless they were super down on their luck, generally speaking, they were pretty nice. Honestly.
I just think, look, we can be honest about the drug. It's addictive. It's horrible.
Sure.
It takes lives. The difference is that if you are to come face to face with somebody who is under the influence of crack cocaine, it's not what you think it's going to be. It
generally was not confrontational.
It is not. Well, in the majority of my interactions,
it also depends on when you find them.
That's a good point, too.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
The big thing I remember from crack, not the big thing I remember, but as far as my interaction with it went, honestly, so like when people make meth, they tend to be somewhat secretive about it. They're not trying to advertise that they're making meth, right? And if you're one of their neighbors, maybe you know what they're doing, maybe you smell something. But with crack, It seemed like, one, it was a drug that if you wanted it, everyone would just do it themselves. And I'm not sure. People use different ingredients to cut it, but almost everywhere I lived at some point in Baltimore, you'd have to address your neighbor and say, hey, man, I don't care what you're doing, but please do me this one favor and stop throwing your cutting agents over the fence into my yard.
Because it's killing everything.
Well, it's not even that. They would dispose of their drain or whatever.
No, it's killing everything.
But for whatever reason, it seemed like the golden rule was if you're making crack, don't throw away your own household products in your trash. Put them in your neighbor's yard.
You know, meth lasts for hours and hours and hours. Crack cocaine is a very small window of time as far as the peak of it. It's only about a 5-minute drug. So you're most of the time you're not going to run into people during that window of just being used. And then it kind of has the effect of a whippet after that. It's like there's a residual that's there. It's just not powerful enough to sustain any kind of craziness.
But the one thing that it seems like meth and crack, as far as one of the eventual side effects, both meth and crack users at some point will start chewing on a sandwich that's not in their
imaginary
mouth.
Sandwich.
I don't know what it is about those drugs that make you
And then they get
What ingredient?
It's prolonged. You got to keep in mind too. Like you're right, the crack high is very short. That's why they do it all the time. But after years of doing it and whatever, you're almost in a permanent psychosis.
You're in a constant.
Yeah, like that Nick Nolte hair blown out, kind of like look to you.
But what? Look, people get high on, I don't know. There's certain drugs I can understand why they're doing what they do as they're kind of coming down, right? If you're itchy, it's because you're itchy. I get it. If you're a stoner and you have the munchies, I get it. You have the munchies. Why do meth and crackheads constantly chew on stuff? Like, what is it about that drug? Like, you sit on the bus and there's a guy, he's keeping to himself, and you realize either he's chewing gum because he's really stressed out, or my man's coming down or whatever. And I'm always like, that's such a weird side effect.
Coming up, the return of Who Sucks Less, and the word goes to individual states and individual slang that is used more than those states than any other. Our question, who is the person from your family that everyone will remember, and good or bad, what will they be remembered for?
The shenanigans continue on the Men's Room Radio Network.